I think my problem with Kafka, other than Metamorphosis, is that his writing is kind of paradoxical because on one hand he tries to create this feeling of hopelessness and tediousness and pointlessness of anything that's happening, but on the other hand it's still a book and you need a reason for reading. And if you have a story that just drags out for 600 pages, that creates the feeling of tediousness and nothingness and hopelessness, at some point you are going to give up and stop reading, right? Like it.
I did.
You have to read so much to understand all this weight of cultural references and historical context that if we just keep reading by randomly and sporadically in bookstore bookcases, we will never be able to read Ulysses.
In a small rustic Czech town, in a discounted bookshop in the empty train station, we picked up a book.
Will I ever be able to read Ulysses?
It is promising us enlightenment. It is a book of 1,000 books. 1,000 greatest books before we die. 1,000 books to die enlightened.
We read 3 books by Kafka collectively.
Good word, collectively. Well, we got through the Metamorphosis together, the Verwandlung, but then we had the process, the trial, and the castle, which we could not get through. The plan was to read both of them, but we could not. So we split the labor, and we each read one. Well,
I read the castle.
I read the trial. Well, let's go through the Metamorphosis first. That I found actually readable.
Well, arguably that's the book that made Kafka the name.
The story that revolves around Gregor Samsa, a traveling salesman who wakes up one morning to find himself transformed into a gigantic insect. And then we just explore what happens to him within a...
Well, not gigantic, like this much. Like that much.
You think so? In my mind...
You think that much?
I think it's life size, yeah. In my mind, it's human size.
How would he... why would he be stuck in a drawer, on a drawer, like something?
I think he was stuck in a drawer. I think he was like...
No, he was like actively struggling with...
Well, he was actively struggling to get on his feet, right? Like on his... I think that's why he was so big he couldn't flip over.
So like show the size of Gregor's animal.
Like human size.
Like human size bug.
I think, why would he shrink? What reasonable...
Well, because there was this description of him trying to climb a cupboard, and he was struggling to climb a cupboard, so he cannot be bigger than a cupboard to climb one.
Big cupboard.
You think he has a cupboard that's bigger than a human?
Well, I thought his problem was that the back is inflexible because, like, you like if
yes, but if you're a man-sized bug, and your back is inflexible, you just stand on your back feet, and you're taller than the cupboard. So how would you be able to climb it?
If your belly is also inflexible, you can't just plop over. I imagine him basically like a large turtle, but more scary.
Right. Well, he must have had a gigantic room then.
Yes, I would say so. Well, in my head, he's life size. That's even more terrifying. Why would you be terrified of a tiny bug?
I think it's guilt.
What do you mean it's guilt?
They're terrified of their guilt.
Oh, I see. Well, we'll never agree on that. But I think...
You think they're actually terrified of the bug?
Well, I would find it a little terrifying.
Well, this sized bug is also terrifying.
Well, why would they assume it's still him? Like, if I walk into a room and there's a gigantic insect, the human-sized insect, I would think, yes, maybe a metamorphosis happened here. But if there's this bug, it'd be like that guy left.
I'm shooting this bug. I'm shooting this bug.
Well, even that, I would think that guy left and something crawled in. Well, no, I think he would just run away, or maybe ate him, yeah. But I wouldn't be taking care of it as my brother. So, Gregor, the protagonist, is the primary breadwinner for the family. He's the one who brings in the money, but he's deeply dissatisfied with his monotonous job, and he's very obsessed with the job.
Yes, he's a salesman.
He's a salesman.
He's a salesman.
Yeah. Well, I like that in descriptions of Kafka's work, Chatbot always gives us the first line, And the first line of this book is, as Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a gigantic insect, which is a lovely introduction.
And that's it.
And that's it. Nothing happens, right? So he's more concerned about being late for work than the fact that he's a bug. So that's very concerning. His family is dependent on him, and he's now unable to communicate verbally, which is a major barrier, right?
For a salesman.
Well, the family contact as well. I mean, when Gregor fails to show up for work, his boss comes to the apartment to investigate, and when they manage to get in, the boss flees in panic. The family is horrified, and they just like...
Well, there is a scene of Gregor refusing to leave his room because he's a bug, and he's ashamed to show people around him what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still thinking, the book is written from the first person, and his boss comes to the apartment and knocks on his door, and asks for explanations, what happened. And Gregor in the book says, there's dialogue from him, but as the scene ends, we realize that actually the words that he's saying aren't heard as words, that he's just growling.
Yeah.
It's a realization for him that he can communicate.
Yeah, but the barricading in, that happens after the boss visit, because when the boss comes in, Gregor actually has the struggle about trying to open the door with his flappy hands that don't work anymore. And
first he can't actually lift himself up, and then he can't open the door once he does move his body. It's very depressing and dark.
Yeah. So then he starts sort of detaching here. He's confined to his room, and becomes isolated really. And it is his sister that takes on the responsibility of feeding him. And there's a lot of dealing with what food they can give him, right? They
don't know what bugs eat.
Yeah, they know what bugs eat, and he doesn't know either, which is funny because he's the bug, and he's like, oh, this doesn't sound good anymore. And then they give him some trash or something, right? Old stuff, and he's like, oh, this is great. And then he's disgusted with himself for eating trash, right? Then he starts crawling on the walls and the ceiling, and they decide to remove the furniture from his room, right? But he tries to protect a picture that he likes, and then because he's hiding, right, while they're doing this, and then they try to remove a picture that he likes, and he goes out to stop them, and his mother faints. And it's all very shocking. And then
the book unravels this terrible guilt dynamic between him, his sister, and the rest of the family, because they all live together in one apartment. Because he feels this guilt, disgust to himself, and aversion, and just all terrible emotions you can imagine for being a bug. And then his family feels all the same emotions about having a bug in their apartment where they're relative.
He gets the confirmation of it in reality, right? He gets the confirmation back from them. It's not anymore just, oh, I feel shit because I'm so disgusting, and now it's like, oh, they're actually terrified of me. There's a feedback.
Yeah, the family is terrified of the bug, and they're trying to deal with it, and they kind of struggle between having this responsibility for their family member, and that's a bug. That's not their family member anymore. And he actually can communicate that he's still conscious. And
well, do you get the sense that? Well, I get the sense that the family knows that's him. That they still treat him like they sort of treat him as a monster, but that they still treat him as him. That's Gregor. He's just a monster now.
Well, his sister is definitely convinced that's what's happening. The father is not sure. And the mother has a progression from, yes, it's definitely him, to let's get rid of this monster.
Right. Now, when this fainting happens, the father comes in, who sees Gregor as a burden, throws an apple at him and actually injures him with the apple. It causes him an injury that never heals, and it just gets stuck in his back
and starts rotting
and everything. And apparently that is an allusion to the biblical notion of original sin and punishment, and as well as being a deep wound inflicted by the father. Maybe emphasis on the father here. Is that what you were thinking about when you saw the apple scene?
No.
What did you think happened there with an apple?
Honestly, same thing. I did not see significant symbolism in it, and it's honestly wild that they ascribe the meaning of original sin to a book written by a Jew.
Well, I mean, why an apple? Could have been an orange. Things will be.
I really hate this weird seeking of symbolism in it. I don't think this book is anything about humanity as a whole. I think it's about guilt and interpersonal relationships.
How's that not humanity as a whole?
I don't think the Father here is God.
I
don't think this is one of the
I don't-
very few books where the Father is not God.
I agree that I don't think this is the main theme, but Kafka's writing is all over the place. I think you might have just, a segue. I think it's a weird segue to, by the way, God, you asshole, you gave us the apple, not my fault.
Maybe.
And in the same way, the apple story is actually a completely irrelevant segue in this. It doesn't act like he does get the injury, but it doesn't actually mean anything, and he doesn't die off that injury, does he?
What I mean doesn't mean anything. In my mind, that scene is a kind of tipping point for saying that it will get worse and worse. That, because he was kind of getting into the mindset that he's going to drag it out for as long as possible. But he gets this injury, and he realizes that this antagonism that's growing between him and his family is not something he can wait out, that he's actively getting damaged and actively getting, threatened by them.
I don't really see that in there. I don't think he's that concerned about himself. I like the God story more. Regardless, quite irrationally, the family then takes on 3 lodgers. So they bring more people into the situation. They need money.
Quite irrationally, yeah. Very irrationally.
Well, they need money, but they have a gigantic bug living in the room next to them.
So you're saying they should have gotten rid of him before they...
Yeah. Oh. I mean, how could you not expect...
Well, they still feel like that's their family member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's still weird. Well, either way, one night, Gret, the sister, is playing a violin to entertain the guests, the lodgers, and he's drawn by the music, and he goes out of the room, and one of the lodgers sees him, this gigantic bug and everything, and they immediately terminate their lease and leave horrified. And then that's where the family decides to get rid of him. They finally start treating him as an enemy. Because he just cost them their second income and everything, right? So this is a really interesting concept. Even if you're a monster, music is still something you share with everybody else, and you sort of get drawn to it, like moth to flame, so to speak. He retreats to his room. He refuses to come out, and in a final act of despair and self-sacrifice, he dies overnight, quietly and alone. It's not quite clear why he dies so suddenly. It's the emotion of despair driving you to death, basically. It's a biological trigger for I'm gonna die now. This thought that you're a burden to everyone, you're horrible, you don't deserve to be here, and then you just decide to die. It's just the idea that if you just feel it intensely enough, you die.
Well, we were talking about it back when we were actively still reading, in the process of reading those books. Mm-hmm. How, to me, it feels like Kafka is someone I should know. Mm-hmm. When you're reading his books, it's so clear who he is as a person. It's very hard to distance the perception of his personality from his writing, and to me, it kind of says that he wasn't that good of a writer, but those ideas are still very interesting and very expressive. I really like this book, The Metamorphosis. Mm-hmm. I just think that he got lucky that he wrote it first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been said many times that to have 100 writers like Kafka in the world would be simply atrocious. One Kafka's enough for the world. Yeah. I mean, one more interesting thing that wasn't mentioned, that was throughout the story, it was the cleaning woman, right? She's the third party, the disinterested party, and she goes in and out, she takes care of the room, she knows what's going on, and she's not freaking out, she's not doing anything. And then she actually informs the family in the end that he's died, and she's yeah, whatever. Mm-hmm. So what's up with her? What's she symbolizing here? Because like she's not behaving very well. She's behaving very humanly, as if she knows everything, right? But at the same time, she's not having the reactions a normal cleaning woman would.
What would the normal cleaning woman's reaction?
Well, if I showed up as a cleaning woman somewhere and there was a gigantic bug in there, I'd be freaking out. I'd be like the lodgers. I think that's a normal human reaction. So like you see a gigantic bug in like, I mean, people run away if they see one of those cockroaches, right? Like whatever the size of this was, it was bigger than a cockroach. So the fact that you clean this place and there's a gigantic bug living there, and you're like, oh yeah, well, let me just sweep around it, like.
I feel like that's very natural. No, it's not your experience with cleaning.
I'm paying, like I would be concerned that if I'm paying someone to clean my house and they leave a gigantic bug in there, and like they don't seem to be concerned about the hygiene of the place.
No, she knows it's a family member. What do you mean?
Well, yes, on that level, yes, but on the basic level, like I think something about the family who keeps gigantic bugs in their room. But what is this character like? What is this?
Well, would you like to start with your interpretation of the story?
I have no idea. Like, what interpretation of the story? I think it just like really embodies Kafka's life as such. These concepts as we have here: alienation, isolation, feeling like the burden of responsibility. I think it's like really nicely embodies modern experience as well. Like you have a meaningless job, you hate doing everything you're doing, and at the same time you feel like you're not contributing. You don't have a sense of purpose. Nothing you do really matters at all. In fact, you're just being a burden for everybody else. I think a lot of those emotions continue to resonate to this day. And the more modern the world becomes, the more we have that, the more lost and purposeless we are, right? So I think this, unlike, for example, in The Great Gatsby, this is an experience I can relate to. It's sort of floating around, not really knowing what to do. And also like realizing that you are the monster, and even like feeling like you are the monster, like feeling that you are somehow different from everybody else. Everybody else just doing their thing and they're perfectly fine, and you are not fine. Like you have a problem, so you are the weird one, right? So that's what the story says to me. Like one day you wake up and you realize, oh shit, maybe I'm the problem. Like everybody else is doing fine, I'm the monster. And the fact that it leads only to despair and death is very concerning.
Why do you emphasize the here? Why is it I'm the monster? Would you like?
Well, the general perception before that is that the others are the monsters who are making your life difficult, right?
What perception before that? According to?
Well, in normal life, generally, people, before assuming they are the bad guys, that other people are doing bad things to them. Like, oh, my mother didn't, oh, my father did, and oh, the school teacher was, and all these things, and my environment is against me, and all of that, and I'm in this situation without me contributing to it. Like we always are faster to blame the others for our misery than blaming ourselves, right?
Great.
Well, people who are not as enlightened as you generally are. I mean, it's a classic problem of blaming others instead of looking at our own part in the story. And this is completely flipped here. I don't agree that it's correct, but I think it's the opposite extreme. That instead of blaming everybody else, you solely blame yourself, and that the roles are reversed. And it's very, very dangerous. But I think that's what happens. Like, I've been watching a lot of like therapy related stuff as well, and there's this problem of the single lonely males, and they often other people, they have this sort of perception that they are ugly, they are not worth it, they can't do anything, they are the ones they're the reason why nobody wants to go out with them, and so on, right? That very much sounds like this experience that you wake up one day and you think, oh shit, I'm ugly and disgusting, and I can't really, that makes sense why nobody wants to be with me, right? So that's like realizing you're a bug, really. And I think in the cases of these people, it's very much the same trajectory if you don't change it at some point. And certainly your father throwing apples at you is not going to help.
Do you think that there is a potential for change?
I think so. I don't think
to do anything at all.
For him, I think I would have, like, you have to leave that situation. Like, that was not a healthy situation to be in.
I think it's yes, what you're talking about is in the book, that's the main theme, but I think it's so good because it goes deeper than that. I think because it's so heavily about the guilt you experience because of that, and the kind of the other side to the story is also covered, that it's not just about his experience of going from the person who only exists to provide for the family, and the family's delete on him, and he's completely stripped of all his identity and life because he has to provide for the family, to a situation where now they have to do something for him, and they just won't because they never were interested in him. They never cared for him. He was just a money bag for them. That he just accepts the situation. It doesn't have the willpower or the strength of his own personality to understand that this is happening, and that these people he put all his trust and all his really life into are not his friends. Like, his sister is good to him, but even she eventually turns away from him. Yeah, I think that the emotional portrayal of the situation is very deep and very expressive, and that's what I like the most about this book.
So is it a book worth reading?
Absolutely. And it's also very short.
Yeah. Always an advantage. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I also think that is a book worth reading. It's been a while since we have read one that's worth reading, but this one definitely is.
What was the scene that you remember the most about?
That was the one right at the beginning where he can't flip on his own feet. I think that was really interesting. I think that says a lot about how we can move on in our life, or can really. But I will tell you the thing that disturbed me the most about the conclusions of this, and that is the fact that when he dies, his family is happy ever after. They move to a better place. They find they get their jobs. They move on. They move on. So I think that's the worst lesson to teach here, is that once your environment is rid of you, everybody's going to be better off, and you were actually the burden. So I think that is a very depressing.
Well, what do you think it actually means?
I think it's a projection of his own view.
So you don't think it's a good view?
I don't think it's a good view. I think it really stems from his own experience of life. I mean, what we know about him is writing this stuff at midnight in his parents' house.
What do you mean it stems from his own experience of life? So you think
Kafka.
His experience?
The
really?
Yeah.
So you think his experience of life is somehow wrong, or?
Well, I think he's projecting his unhappy existence into this and making these conclusions.
Yes, he is, but
yeah, and I think those are very bad conclusions. I don't think you should think that the world would be better off without you. I mean,
so what is he supposed to think?
Well, not that. I mean, it's quite unnecessary as well. I mean, you could end the story there. He died, done, and you don't have to create a happy family image after.
I think that the fact that there is an image of a happy family after is exactly why this book is so good.
No, I do not think people should kill themselves.
No, you're saying that the family actually won't be better off.
No, I'm not saying they won't be. They will be better off or won't be better off.
So they might be better off.
They might be better off. I'm saying that there's no direct connection.
That's what I'm asking you about.
I've stated at least 3 times that there's no direct connection between his death and the family necessarily doing better after. That this is not a link we should be establishing, and it's a very disturbing one, because there are multiple paths to the family being better off later.
But all of them involve getting rid of him in some way.
Yeah, but he could leave himself. There are better solutions than that.
Yes, but all of them...
Or they could get over themselves and work it out and actually take care of him and be better people. I don't know. I mean, all of them. I don't think him leaving or not leaving has anything to do with the family's happiness. The family's happiness is in their own hands.
So you just have a kind of negative moral response to the story.
Yeah, well, I think the family is a bunch of dicks who did everything wrong. So I think this assumption that I have to leave to make them feel better is horrible, because he's basically giving in to the mistreatment that they have given him. He's letting them win, and he's letting them do what he's letting them get away with it. They shouldn't have gotten away with it.
Well, I agree with that point, that the most destructive thing about his situation is that actually his entire life was revolving around this family that doesn't care about him. That if he was in a situation where he wasn't so fully giving to those people, it would have been better for him, even if he was alone. I think that's the tragic part, that he was a very good human in the situation.
Well, the aspect of loneliness seems to be like a key part of a lot of his works, particularly in the next one, The Trial. So you read a little part of it, right? And you get, I don't know how far you got. But
he was sitting in his room, and he got a note that he needs to go to court, but bureaucracy started. Well, I just want to say that reading Kafka is really, really similar to just living life in this country. That's exactly what it feels like. It's very isolating. Everyone hates you. Everyone's mean to you. You get into weird arguments with the law for no reason at all, because some lady, I don't know, misspelled your surname. And it's just constantly dragging and it's so completely absurd. So I feel like I didn't have to read The Trial because that's just my Tuesday.
Right.
But please, what is The Trial about?
Well, the first line is that someone must have been telling lies about Joseph K., for without having done anything wrong, he was arrested on fine morning. One fine morning. So on his 30th birthday, Joseph K., a chief clerk at a reputable bank, is unexpectedly arrested at his boarding house by two warders. But they don't take him into jail. They don't tell him what he's done. They just inform him that he's under arrest for no reason at all, and he will find out later. But Joseph K. is actually allowed to go about his day and do whatever he would do normally. They just, steal some of his stuff and serve him notice and everything. And there's this bizarre scene where. It's basically a bizarre scene where he doesn't know what's happening, and he thinks it's a joke, or some sort of a weird error or something. Yeah. But he also immediately gets judged by his environment, like his landlady and the lady he was interested in for some reason, right? Then he goes to court, which he goes to a hearing at a distant, nondescript location on a Sunday, right? And he finds himself in a crowded, chaotic room where the examining magistrate presides over a farcical trial, and he argues his innocence, but basically it's just a spectacle when the crowd is reacting more like an audience than citizens, than concerned citizens, right?
That's literally me at the immigration office.
Right, so this kangaroo court where nothing makes sense at all. It's not even a court, it's just a bunch of people in somebody's house. It's not like an official building, nothing. There's no actual law, right?
I extremely relate to that.
Right.
Yes. Do you know where the immigration office is?
Oh.
In an abandoned factory. And to get a ticket to your line, you need to stand in a line outside to a little hut outside the factory. And then you have to tell a person what you came there for. They will tell you that it's impossible. You have to convince them that it's possible, that you're there.
Well, hey, you want to live in this country, you better earn it. It's not it's not welcoming for a reason. No. If you have more people like you, it's not going to be that friendly anymore.
If you get 100 Kafkas,
yeah, pretty much. Well, for Kafka, this is the system actually. Yeah. It's impenetrable, it's arbitrary, it's a labyrinth of judicial processes that make no sense. At one point, he tries to get a lawyer, but the lawyer is trying to explain to him how important it is to keep the relationships with the people, that actually keeping the relationships with the court officers is more important than actually justice, law, concepts, any values whatsoever. And he's just hopelessly lost in the system that takes forever. But he is very committed to getting this done. He doesn't want to just let it go, because there's another guy who's going through the same process, who's going to the lawyer, and he's just following all the things that he needs to do, and there's this sort of an assumption that it will go on forever, basically, and you have to be okay with that. It's just an unfortunate situation of life that you are in, right? And the system isn't really a system of justice. It is an elaborate bureaucracy with endless levels of officials. And it's just about perpetuating itself. It's trapping defendants in hearings, appeals, and delays over and over and over and over. And he doesn't want to succumb to this, right? Like, he keeps fighting the system while everybody else around him is just like, well, screw it, we're just going to do it forever, right? Then, yeah.
Well, the feeling I got from all the Kafka's writing, that's, I don't know, it's pretty relatable to me, that this person just doesn't have the self-determination kind of a drive, so he really wants to do everything right, and the only image of how what right looks like is the law for him. So he tries to follow the law, but the law is absurd and nobody is following the law, so he's just a crazy person there trying to ask a judge, why don't you do it according to what's written here?
Well, in the first place, there's no law whatsoever. There's no law books. There's nothing, right? And everybody is following the law. But it's explained to him that following the law has three possible results, which is hilarious. One, an actual acquittal, which is nearly impossible. Then an apparent acquittal, where the case is dismissed but can be reopened later at any time. And a protraction, where the case lingers indefinitely without resolution. So they highlight these options to him and how much that's gonna, effort, what do you have to do for that, and they basically favor protraction, right? Because that way it goes on forever. And he doesn't want to do that. He wants to conclude this and be free of it. But do you know how the book ends?
No.
Well, that's the most shocking thing, because he rejects the process. There's another person who goes through with the process, and then he's portrayed as this crushed soul person, right? Just completely grinds you into dust. But at the end, on Joseph's 31st birthday, after a year of this, two men arrive at his apartment, escorting him to a remote quarry, where, resigned to his fate, Joseph offers little resistance. And in a chilling, surreal scene, the men stab Joseph with a butcher's knife, and his last words, reflecting the last words, are "like a dog." So he dies, and it's because he chose not to get his soul crushed, and that literally led to him being killed for this, right? So he chose to resist the system, and it killed you. So there's absolutely no solution out of this, right? Either it will crush you mentally and you'll become a zombie going through life, or it will literally kill you. So that's pretty depressing.
Yes.
It's a very harsh scene, because throughout the book you always hope for more, because he seems to be moving somewhere, right? Stuff's happening, he's going to court, and nothing happens.
How long is the book?
It's significantly longer than the Metamorphosis, but it's not as long. It's maybe twice or three times the length. Maybe it's
still manageable.
It's manageable, but it's tedious. It's tedious because there's this weird romantic entanglements that lead nowhere. It doesn't really. It has all these segues that go nowhere, and you don't know what's happening, but you feel like it's moving somewhere, right? And then in the end, you're at the scene where they are going to execute the judgment, and you're still thinking it can't end. The story has been moving. It has to be open-ended, but it's not. He's killed. He doesn't just die. He's brutally killed in absolutely cold blood. So shocking. Very, very shocking. It means you mean nothing to the system whatsoever. And the fact that you dared to try to be something and judge the system back is the highest crime, in fact. Capital punishment.
Do you feel like in this country today that would happen?
No.
Is it the vibe?
No, I don't think so. I'm a citizen, so
I think they would just show up and be like, "We have to do this, but we don't care. Just go."
Yeah.
No, they would be late for maybe 2 days. Come there, have lunch, be like, "Oh, we don't have knives. We'll just go."
Yeah, I think the greatest benefit, or the greatest weapon we have today is the disinterest of the authorities. That people literally do not want to spend time on your case. They just don't. If you're not public, if you don't like push things into the visibility, they just don't want to spend time with you. So if you can manipulate the system in a way that you make it as easy for them as possible to make the decision that you need, they'll do it just because it's the easier path. But if you are like creating obstacles and you want justice and you want like your principles, they will fuck you just because you made it harder for them. So the greatest emotion here is like, just don't like make it more difficult for my life as the officer of law, and you'll be fine. It's not about justice at all, right? Nobody cares. I think in principle, a lot of people are trying to do the right thing, but it's just they're so overwhelmed. The courts have so much work, it's not possible to deal with everything. So you're going to be resentful towards the people who will make it more difficult for you.
Well, I feel like the people who are working there are exactly those kinds of people who are crushed by the system completely. Like, have you ever tried to talk to people who work at the government offices here?
Well,
They have no soul.
Well, I work for one public system, so I know what bureaucracy looks like from
They
the
have
inside.
no life in their eyes.
Yeah. Well, you're also not getting paid that much, and it's not really valuable, and then there's like no sense of purpose, because why are you doing this? Like, there's no ethos of we are saving the country.
Yeah.
Like, I can see there was some professions like firefighting or even the police and the soldiering. You can get some ethos, some purpose for why you're doing this. But if you work in immigration, like it's not really helping anyone. And okay, maybe like ICE in America, if you believe that ethos, maybe. That's not the case in Kafka here. Like, the people who are in the court system are keen on being in the court system. They enjoy the power of the judge. They enjoy being in the court. The lawyers are just like giddy with having contacts, like there's like actual like people are pursuing this. They think they're doing something, right? But at the same time, they all know they're not. Yeah, so it's this. And what is disturbing as well is at the end, like, he fights the whole time, but when it comes to the judgment, when he's about to be killed and he realizes he's about to be killed, he gives up. Submission. He's like, okay, just do it. Yeah, whatever.
Well, no, well, he was, the way you said, the way you explained it, if he was fighting for a resolution, he got the resolution.
He got the resolution that got him killed. I don't think he wanted to get himself killed. He wanted to make him, like, set himself free. And, like, he fights for being, like, acquitted. I think he's trying to go for the acquittal. Right, the full acquittal.
Well,
yeah, obviously, he's trying to prove he's innocent.
Yes,
and he doesn't prove that he's innocent. But when he realizes that he doesn't, this is the end, he gives up. Like, that's
do we ever find out what actually happened?
No, we never find out why. None of it. Like, he never finds out why. He fights and fights and fights, but gradually he sort of loses the energy, and when it comes to the end, he just gives up because they bring him to like a quarry and everything. I would expect a struggle, like he could fight, he could like punch back, he could do something, he could run, do something, throw a rock at them. But no, he's just like, okay, dead. Yes. Is it worth reading? Hard to say.
Well, I clearly decided that no.
Well, yeah. If you think your country is doing things right, and then you have if you believe in the power of efficient government, and you think if government can be done efficiently, you should read this. If you already know everything's corrupted, nothing makes any sense, you don't have to. I think it profoundly teaches this lesson of how dysfunctional the systems are.
I think you convince someone?
I think, well, maybe not convince, but I think you can sow doubt. Yeah, I think it can show you a different perspective on how the systems work. It can, like, if you think the justice system is like actually doing justice, that's a good book to read, to see. I mean, it's like Orwell, right? Like 1984. Everybody knows totalitarian regimes are bad, but still, it's not a pain to read the book to see like how bad can they be. So that kind of a lesson.
And I have read The Castle. How much of The Castle have you read?
About 30%. He goes up and down weird streets looking for weird pubs, and it doesn't know where he's going.
Yeah, that's essentially it.
Yeah, there's a weird scene when he goes into somebody's bathroom or something, and then people are just like in pots of water.
Somewhere in there, yes. Well, The Castle is by far the longest book. I'm not sure how long it is exactly, but it's more than an average novel, and nothing happens. he doesn't get much resolved. It's extremely tedious. I think my problem with Kafka, other than Metamorphosis, is that his writing is kind of paradoxical, because on one hand he tries to create this feeling of hopelessness and tediousness and pointlessness of anything that's happening, but on the other hand it's still a book and you need a reason for reading. And if you have a story that just drags out for 600 pages, that creates the feeling of tediousness and nothingness and hopelessness, at some point you are going to give up and stop reading, right? Like it.
I did.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to keep reading Kafka.
There was if I can compare this, the trial and the castle experience. With the trial, you're like, like something's happening, but no. But with the castle, it's like
you're just screaming.
No, with castle you have this first part. It's like it doesn't really go anywhere. Like it moves at the tiniest pace, where you find out that it's not actually a pace. You just turned around.
Yes, it moves so slowly that the characters themselves lose interest and change objectives in the book. So,
like what?
Okay, so the objective that we get at the beginning, we're following the character called K. He is a land surveyor. He has some bureaucratic task he has to fulfill, so he comes to survey the land in a castle. There's a village and a castle on top of it, and the castle contains the bureaucratic structure that governs the village and the land around it, and he tries to get to someone in charge there to do his business, but he can't, because nobody's allowed up the castle. Right. And he knows that he needs to contact someone called Barnabas. So he tries, but the people in the village don't let him. And for 600 pages, he tries to establish some social contacts with people to get closer to fulfilling his task. But I think at about chapter 5, he meets Frida, who's the mistress of Clam. Clam is the guy he needs to go to, who's already in the castle, but he can't see because he's too important. He needs to go further up. That's the first step, and he doesn't get close to that. He doesn't get even up the first step of fulfilling what he came there for. So he meets this Frida, who was his lead to Clam, and falls in love with Frida and starts building a family, and That's it. That's it.
Well, Kafka has a weird relationship with women all the time. Like in every one of the books, maybe not so much in the Metamorphosis, but definitely in the trial. It's just there's multiple women he feels deeply for, and just switches to the next one with complete 180. I love this woman, and then next day he loves another one. So he forms a relationship like that as well in the castle.
No, he pretty much he meets Frida right away. He stays at the end that Frida runs. So they Frida doesn't run. Frida is an assistant there. If Frida works there and he stays there, so he wants to get married. But to get married, they need a permission from Clam. And his reason for trying to get to that person changes from trying to do his job to trying to get permission to get married.
Right.
So he changes his objective, but nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
He still tries to get to the same object, to the same person. It's just incredibly boring.
Well, in each of his books, he's attacking a certain concept. Kafka is very unitary in this way. He's got that one idea that he's really pursuing in each of his works. So, in the trial, it was the bureaucratic system, right? How that can crush you. So, what's crushing Kafka in the castle?
I think, well, for me, I'm not I wouldn't propose this as some objective explanation of the book, but for me, it's the burden of social relationships that you have to establish to do absolutely anything, because like the tediousness comes from the fact that the K tries to understand who all these people are to each other and their complex history and their needs and their wants, and how to kind of negotiate with them in a way or try to befriend them. But some people just hate him for no reason. Some people just won't talk to him for no reason. There is this insane social structure with the separation of the village and the castle that he doesn't understand, but everyone tells him, oh, you're an outsider, you will never understand this. Why are you like making fun of us, or why are you mean to us? This is extremely offensive that you don't understand the social structure. Just like shut up and don't be here. So I think this book is about this anxiety of not understanding this insane societal complex structure.
Well, do you think it has any connection with an experience of life as an autistic person? Do you think this is like an expression of what an autistic person might feel like in terms of social relationships and trying to make it in the world where you don't really understand the rules and nobody explains them to you?
I think that's pretty much what I saw in this book. Well, ChatGPT says here that Kate tries to navigate the village's social hierarchy, hoping to find a way to bypass the official channels. However, every interaction with villagers and minor officials only depends on the labyrinth of red tape.
Right. Yeah, but the bureaucracy in the book struck me as kind of secondary. Like it doesn't seem to be main focus. He can do stuff, but it results to nothing, and like he doesn't really know how to do stuff rather than doing stuff and being crushed by them. Like in the trial. In the trial, he knows what to do. He does it, but it doesn't have a result. He just gets crushed by it or gets the wrong result, right? Now here he just does stuff, but it doesn't really have the outcomes.
Here there are no rules. Like the only block that he really gets in the story is the fact that, like, the rule is pretty clear. He needs to talk to Clam. But the social hierarchy wouldn't let him. And he he just needs to figure out how to get integrated into it. Wow. And by marrying Frida, he tries to become part of it, but nobody really accepts him into this this dynamic. And I think the other contrast to the trial is that this is happening in a very traditional setting. This is not a city. This is literally a medieval castle. But they have phones. When I was reading the book, I think the phone is first mentioned at like 70% of the book, because I thought this is happening in like 15th century.
No. There's a book that he calls the castle on his first night there. Yeah, he calls the castle. But
well, for me it was a pretty late realization because I thought that, like, we're in this medieval kind of a thing. This way everything is so weird and everyone is so hostile and tribal. But actually, it's like contemporary. They have phones.
Well, I think it's kind of reflecting of Kafka's personal problems with the society and like trying to be a member of the society, and like even in the 20s still. Beginning of the century, we still had this major stratification, right, of the people at the top, like the good standing people with the good custom, with the good etiquette people, and all that. And it feels like that's what happens if you try to marry into that class, way above you. You don't know what's going on, you don't know the rules, and they just hate you for no reason at all, just because you're not them, right? You're not part of this inner circle. So, like, interestingly, how that can be very parallel to the autistic experience. That like being autistic today is like trying to marry into upper classes a century ago, right? Because everybody plays according to different rules, and nobody bothers to explain them to you because it's socially rude to explain them to you. But it's also rude not to follow them. So you just have to know. And if you don't know, it's a proof that you don't belong there.
Yeah, that's something they say to him, that well, if you don't understand why you can't see Clam, you have like you just can't be here.
Well, at the same time, he's told very explicitly at the very beginning, no one goes to the castle, right? I think this is like a very clear rejection of meritocracy as well, like where he has this idea, but if I just try hard enough, if I do all these things, I can get there. But he's told very explicitly, no, you can't get there. It's just not done. It's not possible. What you want is impossible, right? And he keeps trying, and he gets nowhere. And so it is proven impossible, right?
Yes, and also about the ending, the way you talked about it in all the stories, the character dies. The castle doesn't end. It just like
it just stops.
Yeah, it just stops.
Wow.
ChatGPT says that according to Max Brod, that's the guy who published all the Kafka's notes, that Kafka originally planned for the character to die of exhaustion after receiving a note on his deathbed that he will never be officially accepted in the village, but he's allowed to stay.
Right.
And that's I don't know. That's very relatable to my immigration experience to Prague. Exactly what
Immigration
it is.
again.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's this very old theme of trying to fit into new environments and classes where you're not really wanted.
Yeah, I think that's. There's also this theme of contrasting this modernity of a bureaucrat of a modernized state that's impersonal, that depends on external rules, and this castle where everything is a hierarchy, everything is some social structure that goes back years and years that you will never understand, that you just have to learn how to play, and I think it portrays a very vivid image of this fear of human sociality that is just is very scary, the way humans build their societies.
Wow.
Yes, and in a castle, I like the imagery. The imagery is beautiful, really. He works with the way things look really well, like this. This picture of a castle towering over a village, and you just not being able to take the first step. That's very impactful for me.
Well, every time, when I read that, I imagined the Edinburgh Castle. When you're getting into Edinburgh from the north area, you're on the train, right? You're approaching the city, and there's this gigantic rock with the tiny castle sitting at the top, and it's just like, what is that? Oh, that's the Edinburgh Castle, but you don't really,
Imagine a tiny castle.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I didn't imagine like a.
I imagine like a Minas Tirith kind of a situation. That it's like that the image of an iceberg that you can see a very 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 small part of it, and then the number of things he would have to do after getting in to get done what he needs to do is so immense that he just dies.
I see. No, I don't see it as a progression of levels like that. I literally see literally the Edinburgh Castle, you have the rock, you have the little house on the top of it, and there's just a simple path from the bottom where the city is to the top, and yet you never go to the top. It's just this simple path is just unsurmountable, and it seems so easy. I think that's part of what's depressing there, that you could literally just walk up to the gate. But
he did.
But it doesn't help. You can't actually cross it. It doesn't do anything. So it seems so simple, yet it's impossible. Is Kafka worth reading?
Metamorphosis, yes.
Right. Well, so for me, it's like if you read one, you've read them all.
Yeah.
I think you just managed to capture the spirit of Kafkaesque so perfectly in every single one of his works. But
really,
yeah, but all of them are the same essentially. They deal with different issues. As we have noticed, the narrative is the same, the plot lines are the same, the characters are basically the same. They even named the same thing, and they end the same. They die. There's various different ways of dying, and it's always hopeless. It's always alienated. It's always bizarre. And but it's interesting how he basically wrote the same story many times over, crushing individual aspects of life. But it's all the same thing, really. If you had more time to bring it together, might have been quite interesting. But we should be thankful that at least the Metamorphosis was finished as it is, because, well, that's objectively a decent piece.
Yes.
The Castle, definitely no go. Didn't do that.
Well, I'm happy it exists in the world. But I don't think that you in your lifetime should take the time of reading it.
Hey, I read 30% of it. I feel like I know what the book is.
Yeah, nothing changed. Like, it's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. Right. So you can read the first few chapters and so you know what's it about.
Or you can try to apply for a visa in Prague. Same thing.
Well, I think the trial is more fitting for that. I would recommend the trial if you're maybe not together with the Metamorphosis, but like if you have really nothing else to read. I'm like captivated but I think the description of what the story is plus a couple of chapters read is enough. You don't have to suffer through all of it.